Another way to attach objects together is to connect them to curves on surface. Now we saw this a little bit by using the trim tool, which creates a curves on surface, but let's go ahead and draw one from scratch. I'm just going to create a simple NURBS plane here, and then just drag it above the grid so that we can see it. Now if we want, we can use this kind of as a piece of paper and actually draw curves on this. So all I have to do is select the object and hit this little magnet icon here. And this is just another form of snap. Now what this does is it makes the object live. In other words, it allows me to draw curves on it. So when I click on this, the surface changes. And then when I create a curve, let's go ahead and create a CV curve, the curves stick to the surface. So if I wanted to create, say, this type of curve here and hit enter, that curve is actually stuck to that surface. So if I turn off live mode and select that surface, you can see that when I go into control vertex for the surface, that curve actually sticks to the surface. Now you can see that this can be very, very handy to have a curve like that stuck to a surface. So if I wanted to, I could select the curve itself and then just go edit curves, duplicate surface curves. We've done this before, but now I've duplicated that curve that I've drawn on the surface. And now we can use this as the basis of another surface. For one, I can select this one and do surfaces loft, and now I have a loft that is connected to this original surface. So if I go back into object mode here, select this surface, you can see it moves together. But if I go into the control vertices of this surface, you can see how deforming this surface allows this loft to stay connected. So let's go ahead and do a more practical example. I'm going to go to object mode here, select everything and delete it. Now I have my layer of that flying saucer that we've been building. Now we've already built the tail once using a loft, but let's go ahead and rebuild it once using curves on a surface. So I'm going to hop out to my top view here, and I'm going to select that saucer, and then again I'm going to make it live. And now I'm going to draw the outline of my tail. So I'm going to go into create curves. I'm going to use CV curves, but you can use whatever you want. And then I'm going to start back here at the very tip and make it kind of pointy right there. And then expand it out and make kind of a wing shape here. So I'm trying to get this fairly symmetrical. I can always edit it later, but I'm just going to do this roughly. And then right there at the end, because this is going to be a closed surface, I need to close it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep the curve selected, edit curve, open, close. You'll see I'm getting a really weird artifact here. And that's because I drew it pretty close to the end there. So I'm going to right click, go and control vertex of that, and then just go ahead and move those. So I'm actually going to go ahead and slide this around. You can see how I can actually slide these around. And I'm going to unwind this. You can see how, and this is actually a really good example of how curves on surface works, because these are stuck to that surface. You're just basically moving it in 2 dimensions. You can't move it in Z, you can only move it in X and Y, or U and V for a NURB surface. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and dial this in a little bit, try and get a fairly uniform shape, and there we go. So let's say I've got this. So I'm going to go into object mode now. So I've got a pretty reasonably shaped wing. I can probably do this a little bit better, but let's do this for now. So I'm going to go ahead and select that curve, and let's just go ahead and do edit curves, duplicate surface curves. I'm going to go ahead and move that second curve up. Now, when you duplicate a curve, it automatically goes to the origin. So your move point is going to be way down here. And then once I've done this, I'm going to also make sure I turn off live here. Now, if you want to center that pivot, you can just always do modify center pivot, and that will make it a little bit easier to work with. And then I'm going to also use my scale tool to kind of flatten out this curve just a bit, and then just maybe rotate it, and maybe also scale it because the tail is going to get a little bit more narrow as we move up. So I'm just going to make a few of these outlines here, and we'll just do a rough one. So I'm going to again do Control D to duplicate. Move that second outline up, scale it, make it a little bit narrower. One more, Control D, move it up. Now I'm trying to move this directly up in Y. Scale it, narrow it, and let's do one more. So I'm going to go Control D, make the very tip of this. And for the very tip, I want that tail to be flat. So I'm just going to go ahead and scale it as close to 0 as possible. Maybe make it a little bit narrower, and there we go. So now I've got a couple of different outlines, and all I have to do now is go into select mode, select this one, select them in order, surfaces, loft. And now I've got something resembling a tail. We can certainly tweak this a little bit more by going into the side view maybe and selecting my original curves, and we can move them to reshape the tail if we want. So again, makes it very interactive and very easy way to create curved surfaces. So you can basically get the hang of how to do this, but what we've done is we've locked the base of the tail to the surface of the saucer using curves on surface, and then that original curve is used to create the tail.